Lieutenant June stepped carefully through the metal corridors of the abandoned research facility. His boots echoed against the cold floor as he explored the mysterious building on planet Kepler 442b. The place had been dark for months, but something about it felt wrong, very wrong. He had been sent here to investigate strange energy readings that appeared on their long-range scanners. The readings were unlike anything humans had seen before. His commanding officers thought it might be new, technology or maybe even alien artifacts. June volunteered for the mission because he was curious about the unknown. The upper levels of the facility looked normal enough. There were empty offices, research labs with broken equipment, and computer terminals that no longer worked. Everything was covered in dust. It looked like the people who worked here had left in a hurry. Papers were scattered everywhere, and some doors were still wide open. But as John went deeper into the building, things started to feel different. The walls became thicker, made of some kind of reinforced metal. The corridors grew narrower and darker. Emergency lights flickered on and off, casting strange shadows that made him jump. His scanner kept beeping faster and faster, showing that the energy source was getting closer. When he reached the lowest level, June found something that made his blood run cold. Behind a heavy security door, there was a room filled with strange machines and monitoring equipment. But that wasn't the worst part. In the center of the room was a glowing energy cage, and inside it was a young woman. She wasn't human. Her skin had a slight blue tint, and her eyes were larger than a human's eyes. Her hair was long and silver, almost like starlight. She was sitting in the corner of the cage, looking weak and scared. When she saw June, she pressed herself against the far wall, clearly terrified. June had never seen anything like her before. He realized she must be from an alien species. The energy cage was keeping her trapped, and from the look of the machines around the room, someone had been running experiments on her. The thought made him angry. Who would do such a thing to another living being? The woman, he decided to call her that because she looked young and afraid, watched him carefully. She seemed to be trying to figure out if he was going to hurt her too. Her eyes were intelligent, and June could tell she was studying him just as much as he was studying her. He looked around the room and found computer screens with data about something called telepathic abilities and psychic energy extraction. The files mentioned a species called the Veiltar. Everything started to make sense. Someone had captured this alien woman to study her mental powers. They had been using her like a laboratory animal. June felt sick to his stomach. This was wrong, on every level. He didn't care what species she was from or what abilities she had. No one deserved to be locked up and experimented on like this. He had to help her, but he wasn't sure how. The energy cage looked complicated, and he didn't want to accidentally hurt her while trying to free her. The woman tilted her head slightly, still watching him. For just a moment, June thought he heard a whisper in his mind, but it was so faint. He wasn't sure if he had imagined it. Whatever was happening, he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't going to leave her here. June took a slow step toward the energy cage, keeping his hands visible and open. He didn't want to scare the alien woman any more than she already was. Her large eyes followed his every movement, and he could see her body tensing up, ready to defend herself even though she was trapped. When he got closer, she pressed herself even further into the corner of the cage. She started making soft sounds that might have been words in her language, but they sounded frightened and desperate. June's heart broke seeing how terrified she was. He could only imagine what horrible things had been done to her in this place. "Hey, it's okay," June said softly, even though he knew she probably couldn't understand him. "I'm not going to hurt you." He kept his voice calm and gentle, the way he would talk to a scared animal. He slowly crouched down so he wouldn't look so tall and threatening. The woman stopped making sounds and watched him carefully. Her breathing was fast and shallow. June could see old bruises on her arms and face, proof that her captors had not been kind to her. It made him even more determined to help her escape from this nightmare. He pointed to himself and said, "June." Then he pointed at her with a questioning look. She didn't respond at first, but after a few seconds, she touched her chest and made a sound that sounded like Hana. At least now they had names for each other. June smiled and nodded. "Hana," he repeated, trying to pronounce it the way she had. Her eyes widened slightly, and for the first time she didn't look completely terrified. Maybe she was starting to realize that he was different from the people who had captured her. To show that he wanted to help, June started examining the energy cage. The controls were on a panel about 10 feet away from where Hana was trapped. He walked over to it slowly, always keeping his movements gentle and predictable. The last thing he wanted was to make her think he was going to activate some kind of torture device. The control panel was covered with buttons and switches that he didn't recognize. There were also several computer screens showing graphs and numbers that meant nothing to him. Everything was written in a language he had never seen before. This was going to be much harder than he thought. Hana watched him study the controls. She seemed to understand what he was trying to do because she started pointing at different parts of the cage and making gestures. She would point at a section of the energy field, then at specific buttons on the control panel. It was like she was trying to help him figure out how to free her. June took a slow step toward the energy cage, keeping his hands visible and open. He didn't want to scare the alien woman any more than she already was. Her large eyes followed his every movement, and he could see her body tensing up, ready to defend herself even though she was trapped. When he got closer, she pressed herself even further into the corner of the cage. She started making soft sounds that might have been words in her language, but they sounded frightened and desperate. June's heart broke seeing how terrified she was. He could only imagine what horrible things had been done to her in this place. "Hey, it's okay," June said softly, even though he knew she probably couldn't understand him. "I'm not going to hurt you." He kept his voice calm and gentle, the way he would talk to a scared animal. He slowly crouched down so he wouldn't look so tall and threatening. The woman stopped making sounds and watched him carefully. Her breathing was fast and shallow. June could see old bruises on her arms and face, proof that her captors had not been kind to her. It made him even more determined to help her escape from this nightmare. He pointed to himself and said, "June?" Then he pointed at her with a questioning look. She didn't respond at first, but after a few seconds, she touched her chest and made a sound that sounded like Hana. At least now they had names for each other. June smiled and nodded. "Hana," he repeated, trying to pronounce it the way she had. Her eyes widened slightly, and for the first time she didn't look completely terrified. Maybe she was starting to realize that he was different from the people who had captured her. To show that he wanted to help, June started examining the energy cage. The controls were on a panel about 10 feet away from where Hana was trapped. He walked over to it slowly, always keeping his movements gentle and predictable. The last thing he wanted was to make her think he was going to activate some kind of torture device. The control panel was covered with buttons and switches that he didn't recognize. There were also several computer screens showing graphs and numbers that meant nothing to him. Everything was written in a language he had never seen before. This was going to be much harder than he thought. Hana watched him study the controls. She seemed to understand what he was trying to do because she started pointing at different parts of the cage and making gestures. She would point at a section of the energy field, then at specific buttons on the control panel. It was like she was trying to help him figure out how to free her. June realized that she must have been watching her captors operate the cage for a long time. She probably knew more about how it worked than he did. He started following her gestures, pressing the buttons she indicated. Some of them made the energy field flicker, while others changed the color from blue to red. Every time he pressed a button, Hana would either nod encouragingly or shake her head and point to a different one. They were working together, even though they couldn't really communicate with words. It was amazing how much they could understand each other through simple gestures and expressions. After several minutes of trial and error, June pressed a sequence of buttons that made the entire cage start to hum differently. The energy field began to weaken, and Hana's eyes lit up with hope for the first time since he had found her. As Hana's telepathic abilities grew stronger, something amazing started happening between her and June. One quiet evening, while they were sitting together in the ship's common area, she gently placed her fingertips on his forehead. Suddenly, June's mind filled with the most beautiful images he had ever seen. He found himself looking at Hana's homeworld through her memories. The planet was covered in floating crystal cities that sparkled like diamonds in the light of twin suns. Tall, graceful towers reached toward purple skies, connected by bridges made of what looked like solid light. Gardens filled with plants that glowed softly in the darkness grew everywhere, creating a peaceful, dreamlike atmosphere. But the most wonderful part was seeing Hana's family. Through her memories, June met her parents, her younger brother, and her grandmother who had taught her to control her telepathic gifts. He could feel the love they all shared for each other. It was so strong and pure that it brought tears to his eyes. He understood now why being separated from them had been so painful for her. Hana showed him more memories of her people. The Veiltar didn't just use their telepathic abilities for communication. They used them to share emotions, comfort each other during difficult times, and even to create beautiful art together. Groups of her people would join their minds to paint pictures in the air using pure thought and energy. It was like nothing humans had ever imagined. When the telepathic connection ended, June sat quietly for a moment, trying to process everything he had experienced. "Your world is incredible," he whispered. "Your family must be so worried about." Hayochi, Hana nodded sadly, touching her heart to show how much she missed them. Wanting to share something equally meaningful, June brought out his personal tablet and showed Hana some of Earth's greatest treasures. He played her classical music by composers like Beethoven and Mozart. Her eyes widened as the beautiful melodies filled the ship. Even though she had never heard human music before, she could feel the emotions the composers had put into their work. June then showed her paintings from famous human artists. When she saw Van Gogh's Starry Night, she gasped and pointed excitedly at the swirling patterns. Through their growing telepathic connection, she shared that her people created similar swirling energy patterns when they worked together. The eyes. Similarities between their cultures were remarkable. He showed her photographs of human families celebrating birthdays, weddings, and holidays. Hana studied each picture carefully, then shared telepathic images of similar celebrations from her world. Both species gathered to honor important moments in life. Both cared deeply about protecting their children and elderly family members. Both believed that love and kindness were the most important values anyone could have. One day, June showed Hana a video message from his own family back on Earth. His parents and sister were wishing him good luck on his mission. As they watched, Hana could sense through her telepathic abilities how much June loved and missed his family, just like she loved and missed hers. The feeling was exactly the same, even though they were from completely different worlds. This realization created a special bond between them. They both understood what it meant to be far from home and the people they cared about. They both knew the importance of family, loyalty, and protecting innocent people from harm. These shared values became the foundation of their growing friendship. As the days passed, their cultural exchange continued. June taught Hana to appreciate human food, while she helped him understand the peaceful philosophy of her people. They were building something neither had expected, a bridge between two completely different worlds, connected by the simple truth that kindness and love were universal. The peaceful days aboard June's ship came to a sudden end when his communication system started beeping with an urgent message. June's face went pale as he read the incoming transmission. A corporate security team was tracking them, and they weren't interested in negotiating. They wanted Hana back, and they were willing to do whatever it took to get her. "We need to move. Now," June told Hana, his voice tense with worry. Even though her human language skills were still developing, she could sense his fear through their growing telepathic connection. Something was very wrong. Hana closed her eyes and extended her psychic abilities outward, something she was finally strong enough to do again. What she sensed made her gasp in terror. 3 heavily armed ships were approaching fast, filled with people whose minds radiated cold determination and greed. These weren't just any mercenaries. They were the same type of people who had captured and tortured her before. June immediately fired up the ship's engines and changed course toward a nearby asteroid field. If they could hide among the floating rocks, maybe they could avoid detection. But as soon as they entered the asteroid field, Hana sensed that their pursuers had split up to surround them. They were being hunted like animals. Can you tell me where they are? June asked, sweat beading on his forehead as he piloted the ship through the dangerous asteroid field. Hannah nodded and placed her hand on his shoulder. Through their telepathic connection, she shared what she could sense, the locations of the 3 enemy ships, the number of people on each one, and even their basic intentions. This gave June a huge advantage. He could anticipate their moves before they made them. When the mercenaries tried to box him in between 2 large asteroids, he was already changing direction. When they attempted to cut off his escape route, he had already found another path, through the floating rocks. But running wasn't going to work forever. The corporate ships were faster and better armed than June's small vessel. They needed a real plan. Working together, June and Hannah came up with a desperate strategy that would use both of their abilities. Hannah focused her telepathic powers on the lead mercenary ship. She couldn't control the minds of the people inside, but she could make them feel confused and disoriented. The pilot started making mistakes, flying too close to asteroids and nearly crashing into his own teammates. Meanwhile, June used his military training to set traps using the ship's limited weapons systems. Their teamwork was incredible. Hannah would warn June about incoming attacks before the enemies even fired their weapons. June would position their ship perfectly to avoid damage while setting up counterattacks. They moved through space like they were dancing together, each one knowing exactly what the other would do next. The chase continued across multiple star systems. Every time it seemed like they had escaped, more corporate ships would appear. The mercenaries had resources and backup that seemed endless. June's ship was running low on fuel, and both he and Hannah were exhausted from the constant stress and danger. During a brief moment of safety, while hiding behind a small moon, Hannah made a difficult decision. She told June that she could use her telepathic abilities to send a distress signal to her own people, but it would reveal their location to everyone, including their pursuers. It was a huge risk, but they were running out of options. June looked at her tired face and nodded. "Do it," he said. "We trust each other, right?" Hannah smiled for the first time in days and began sending her telepathic message across the stars, hoping her people would hear her call for help before the mercenaries found them again. Just when it seemed like there was nowhere left to run, June received an encrypted message on his personal communication channel. It was from his sister Mira, who worked at a diplomatic station in the neutral zone between human and alien territories. She had been monitoring the situation and knew they needed help desperately. "June, bring her here immediately," Mira's message said. "I've been tracking the corporate bounty hunters, and I have legal authority to offer sanctuary. Get to Station Echo 7 as fast as you can." For the first time in days, June felt a spark of hope. His sister was one of the smartest people he knew, and if anyone could help them, it was her. The journey to the diplomatic station was nerve-wracking. June had to use every trick he knew to avoid the mercenary ships that were still hunting them. Hannah stayed connected to his mind through her telepathic abilities, helping him sense danger before it appeared. They jumped between star systems, used asteroid fields for cover, and even hid inside the energy field of a dying star to throw off their pursuers. When they finally docked at Station Echo 7, Mira was waiting for them with a full security team. She was a tall woman with the same kind eyes as her brother, but she carried herself with the confidence of someone used to handling difficult situations. The moment she saw Hannah, her expression softened with sympathy and anger at what had been done to her. "Welcome to safety," Mira told Hannah in carefully practiced words from the Veiltar language. She had been studying it since receiving June's message. Hannah was so surprised to hear her own language from a human that she nearly started crying. For the first time since her rescue, she felt like she might actually be safe. Mira immediately got to work. As a diplomatic officer, she had contacts throughout the galaxy, including some connections with the Veiltar government. She helped Hannah send a proper message to her homeworld, explaining what had happened and where she was now. The response came within hours. A Veiltar diplomatic ship was already on its way to the station, but Mira had an even bigger plan. She knew that what had happened to Hannah wasn't an isolated incident. The corporate research facility had probably captured and experimented on other alien beings too. If they could prove this and expose the illegal activities, they could shut down the entire operation and prevent it from happening to anyone else. The problem was getting evidence that would hold up in Galactic Court. That's where Hana's unique abilities became crucial. Her telepathic powers weren't just useful for communication, they could also serve as a form of testimony that was impossible to fake. When Veiltar telepaths shared memories, the images and emotions were so detailed and accurate that they were accepted as legal evidence by most civilized governments. Working with Mira's legal team, Hana began the difficult process of reliving her traumatic experiences and sharing them through her telepathic abilities. Special recording equipment captured her mental testimony, creating an undeniable record of the crimes that had been committed against her. It was painful for her to remember everything, but June stayed by her side throughout the entire process, offering comfort and support. The evidence they gathered was shocking. Through Hana's memories, they could see not just what had been done to her, but also glimpses of other prisoners who had been held at the facility. There had been members of at least 3 different alien species subjected to similar experiments. Some of them had not survived. When the Veiltar diplomatic ship arrived, Hana's reunion with her people was emotional and beautiful. But instead of immediately returning home, she made a brave decision. She wanted to stay and help with the legal case to make sure that the criminals who had hurt her and others would face justice. Her courage inspired everyone around her. The day of the trial arrived faster than anyone expected. The Galactic Court on Station Echo 7 was packed with representatives from dozens of different species, news reporters, and legal experts. This wasn't just about Hana anymore. It had become one of the most important legal cases in recent history, dealing with the rights of all intelligent beings across the galaxy. Hana sat in the witness area, wearing traditional Veiltar robes that her people had brought for her. She looked nervous but determined. June sat directly behind her in the observer section, close enough that she could feel his supportive presence. Throughout their time together, he had become more than just her rescuer. He was now her closest friend and strongest advocate. The corporate executives who had run the illegal research facility sat at the defendant's table, looking confident and expensive in their business suits. They had hired the best lawyers money could buy, and they clearly thought they could talk their way out of trouble. They had no idea what they were about to face. When it was time for Hana to testify, she walked slowly to the special witness stand that had been equipped with telepathic recording devices. These machines could capture and display her memories for everyone in the courtroom to see. It was technology that most humans had never witnessed before, and the room fell completely silent in anticipation. The prosecutor, a skilled lawyer who specialized in interspecies crimes, asked Hana to share her memories of what had happened at the research facility. Hana closed her eyes and placed her hands on the recording device. Immediately, the large screens around the courtroom began showing images directly from her mind. Everyone in the courtroom watched in horror as Hana's memories played out like a movie. They saw her being captured while visiting a peaceful trade station. They witnessed her being transported in a cramped, dirty cage to the research facility. Most shocking of all, they saw the brutal experiments that had been performed on her, designed to understand and exploit her telepathic abilities. The corporate lawyers tried to object, claiming that telepathic evidence couldn't be trusted. But the technology was too advanced and too accurate. Every detail in Hana's memories could be verified against physical evidence from the facility. The dates, times, locations, and even the faces of the people involved matched perfectly with security footage and other records. As Hana continued her testimony, she showed the court memories of other prisoners who had been held at the facility. There was a reptilian being from the Zorith system who had been subjected to experiments on his natural camouflage abilities. A gaseous life form from the nebula colonies had been trapped and studied for its unique method of communication. Some of these beings had died during the experiments, their bodies disposed of like garbage. The most powerful moment came when Hana shared her emotional memories, the fear, pain, and desperation she had felt during her captivity. Through the telepathic connection, everyone in the courtroom could actually feel a small portion of what she had experienced. Several people started crying, including some of the reporters and even a few of the court officials. June watched proudly as Hana answered every question with courage and honesty. When the defense lawyers tried to confuse her or make her seem unreliable, she remained calm and clear. Her telepathic abilities made it impossible for her to lie, which actually made her the most credible witness the court had ever seen. The corporate executive's confidence began to crumble as more evidence was presented. Financial records showed millions of credits being spent on illegal alien capture operations. Communication logs revealed discussions about selling research data to military contractors. By the end of Hana's testimony, their guilt was undeniable. When the verdict was announced, justice was swift and complete. The corporate conspirators received the maximum sentences allowed under Galactic. After the trial ended and justice was served, everyone expected Hana to return home to her family. On the Veiltar homeworld, her people had prepared a hero's welcome for her, and ships were ready to take her back to the floating crystal cities she had shared in her memories with June. But when the time came to say goodbye, Hana made a decision. That surprised everyone. "I want to stay," she told the Veiltar diplomatic team in her native language. Then she turned to June and said in careful human words, "I want to explore galaxy with you." Her family, speaking through the telepathic communicators, were confused. At first, why would she choose to stay away from home when she was finally free to return? June was equally surprised. He had assumed that after everything she had been through, Hana would want nothing more than to be reunited with her loved ones. "Are you sure?" he asked her gently. "Your family misses you so much. They've been waiting for you to come home." Hana smiled and placed her hand on his arm. Through their telepathic connection, she shared her feelings with him. She showed him that while she loved her family deeply, her terrible experience had changed her. She had seen the worst that some beings could do to others, but she had also experienced the best, the kindness and courage that June had shown her. She wanted to use what she had learned to help prevent other innocent beings from suffering the way she had. The Veiltar elders, wise beings who had lived for centuries, understood her choice better than anyone else. Through their representatives, they gave Hana their blessing to follow her new path. They also offered something unexpected. They wanted to sponsor a new type of research team that would focus on peaceful contact between different species. Within weeks, June and Hana found themselves at the center of an exciting new project. The Galactic Council, impressed by how well they had worked together during the trial, offered them positions as the first human Veiltar partnership in the new Xenological Research Division. Their job would be to study different alien cultures and help create better ways for species to meet and communicate without fear or misunderstanding. Their first assignment took them to a remote system where a shy, insect-like species had been discovered. Previous contact attempts by other research teams had failed because the aliens were too frightened to communicate. But June and Hana's approach was different. Instead of arriving in large, intimidating ships, they came in June's small vessel, the same one that had carried them to safety. Hana used her telepathic abilities to sense the emotions of the insect beings from a distance, while June used his military training to ensure they approached in a non-threatening way. Together, they were able to establish the first peaceful contact with the species. The insects, who called themselves the Ziktar, were actually incredibly intelligent and had been hiding from other aliens because they feared being captured and studied, just like what had happened to Hana. Word of their success spread quickly throughout the galaxy. Other species began requesting their help with difficult first contact situations. June and Hana developed new protocols that emphasized patience, respect, and understanding. They showed that the key to successful interspecies relations wasn't advanced technology or military power. It was simple compassion and the willingness to see other beings as equals. Their partnership became famous across many worlds. They were living proof that beings from completely different backgrounds could not only work together, but could create something beautiful and meaningful in the process. Scientists, diplomats, and ordinary citizens from dozens of species looked to them as an example of what the galaxy could become if everyone chose cooperation over conflict. As they traveled from system to system, helping to build bridges between worlds, June and Hana knew they had found their true purpose together. June realized that she must have been watching her captors operate the cage for a long time. She probably knew more about how it worked than he did. He started following her gestures, pressing the buttons she indicated. Some of them made the energy field flicker, while others changed the color from blue to red. Every time he pressed a button, Hana would either nod encouragingly or shake her head and point to a different one. They were working together, even though they couldn't really communicate with words. It was amazing how much they could understand each other through simple gestures and expressions. After several minutes of trial and error, June pressed a sequence of buttons that made the entire cage start to hum differently. The energy field began to weaken, and Hana's eyes lit up with hope for the first time since he had found her.